that Justin Baldoni is harassing her. She was playing the young version of Blake. Isabela, I don't understand what you're doing here and throwing and just supporting this Justin's her harasser narrative, and now you're doubling down.
Isabela Ferrer's position inside the courtroom has become a lightning rod for speculation. Was her testimony a deliberate fabrication, or is this simply another battle in Hollywood's ongoing war for influence? Official records paint one picture: private messages where she calls Justin Baldoni trustworthy, even describing him as kind and dependable. Yet, in a dramatic turn, Blake Lively's team now suggests Ferrer wasn't just aware of wrongdoing, but willing to overlook it, casting her in a very different light. This sudden shift raises pressing questions. How does someone move from praising a man's character to standing firmly against him under oath? The contradiction is not only striking but also unsettling for those following the case. Court watchers say the whiplash in her stance may signal deeper strategies at play behind closed doors. And shortly, I'll break down the legal document that could completely flip the story on its head.
The right thing and tell what happened. At this point, you've now aggravated the fan base that you're afraid of. And I could see why you might be afraid of, because no one's going to believe you. And there is a part of me that's like, I hope nothing did happen, because no one's going to believe you. And I see that problem. That's why I think she's in a possible situation. There are so many people in this Justice for Justin camp. They're not going to believe even if something went bad. Now, I don't think anything went bad. I don't think it's possible anything went bad that was so deemed of all this to blow up the way it did. But there is a version of this where she may have actually, looked back and go, you know what? I wish he hadn't have said that. Or, I didn't like that. Does that mean she wanted to drag this into the lawsuit like Blake did? Hell no. So I can see why she might be conflicted potentially. But did you tell Justin you were uncomfortable? That's the other problem. Just like Blake didn't mention it during the dance sequence, if she really was. Communication is key. And the reality is, in my opinion, I don't understand what could have happened to warrant what this has blown up to. And for that reason alone, Isabela, I don't understand what you're doing here and throwing and just supporting this Justin's her harasser narrative, and now you're doubling down. This is...
What if the very piece of evidence once brushed aside as casual conversation is, in fact, the most dangerous weapon in this entire trial? At first glance, Isabela Ferrer's text messages to Justin Baldoni read like harmless pleasantries. She calls him intelligent, supportive, even one of the safest figures in Hollywood's unpredictable world. In an industry where flattery is routine, those messages hardly raised an eyebrow. But upon closer inspection, the same words begin to cut like a blade. While Ferrer privately described Baldoni as thoughtful and steady, Blake Lively's camp has been painting a very different picture, one where Ferrer allegedly felt uneasy and pressured under his influence. That clash between text and testimony is where the case begins to fracture. How can someone claim discomfort in official filings while their own phone records show admiration and trust? The contrast is not just awkward, it's potentially devastating. Imagine the impact in court: your own cheerful words projected aloud, filled with compliments about safety and respect, all while your side argues you felt cornered and powerless. The emotional tones don't match, and juries notice when tones don't match. If a person truly felt unsafe, would their text sparkle with warmth, or would they show hesitation, clipped replies, maybe even silence? Instead, Ferrer's words read like comfort, not fear. Still, nothing in Hollywood is straightforward. Politeness here often masks survival instincts. Young actors and rising stars learn quickly that every smile, every text, every compliment might be part of staying in the good graces of powerful people. Ferrer's glowing words could be genuine, or they could be the kind of diplomatic gestures used to avoid conflict. A polite smile at a party doesn't mean you want to stay, it simply means you don't want to cause a scene. And when those gestures get dragged into legal filings, sincerity and strategy blur in ways that can topple entire cases. History has shown that private texts, once dismissed as trivial, have shattered lawsuits and overturned narratives. Chains of messages that seemed insignificant at the time ended up exposing inconsistencies no legal team could explain away. That's why Ferrer's texts now loom so large. Were they heartfelt praise, or calculated words of self-preservation? Did she knowingly step into a courtroom battle, or was she swept up by forces bigger than herself? Each message that surfaces deepens the uncertainty, forcing everyone to question which version of events is closest to the truth. And here's the real twist. Buried within Blake Lively's own filings is a puzzling error, a slip that suggests her legal team may have shaped this story far more aggressively than anyone realized. If simple compliments are already cracking the foundation, that mistake could set off an explosion. The debate is no longer about whether these texts matter. It's about how destructive they'll be once the full context comes to
version of Blake. They were all over each other during the promotion. They were doing slumber parties. Suddenly Taylor Swift she was meeting Taylor and basically getting loved bomb, it seemed, by Blake and Ryan. And honestly, I could see why Isabela chose them, because they're a big, powerful couple. Honestly, they could have destroyed her career if they wanted to, as they're starting to prove, right? So Isabela chose the big, fancy couple, and sadly, seemingly shunned Justin, which is what he alleged. And it's also in this thing. And so that's why Justin wanted to subpoena her to get these text messages and figure out, did you ever complain? Were you told to shun me? What kind of stuff might there be? And the only thing we've seen is his response to Blake's inappropriate allegations, where Isabela said, you are a wonderful, smart, sincere director who created such a comfortable, safe space for me. I feel like I could step into this role. I couldn't have asked for a more welcoming environment. And he said, oh my gosh, thank you. You were a pleasure. This is what we have to base it off of, though. Now, this text exchange was brought in by Justin.
This is the point where the case shifts from curious to downright surreal. Hidden inside one of Blake Lively's court filings was a reference that stopped readers in their tracks. Instead of naming Justin Baldoni or his attorneys, the document suddenly mentioned, of all things, the Wayfair team. Yes, Wayfair, the online furniture retailer. Within minutes of discovery, the reaction was electric. How could a case of this magnitude casually drop the name of a shopping site in place of the very figure at the center of the dispute? For a legal team as polished and calculated as Blake's, the slip felt almost unthinkable. Speculation spread instantly. Was it nothing more than a late-night typo, or did it hint at something far more telling? Lawyers, after all, draft thousands of words under intense deadlines, and errors do happen. But this mistake didn't read like an ordinary oversight. The wording was oddly specific, strangely placed, and glaring enough to feel like a fingerprint, one that might reveal who was really shaping the storyline behind the scenes. That's where suspicion turned. Was this filing entirely the product of Blake's attorneys, or had her public relations handlers had a hand in drafting it first? Observers online were quick to point out that the language sounded less like measured legal writing and more like polished publicity copy. The document read as though it had been lifted from a press kit rather than a courtroom filing, and there's precedent for this. In other celebrity legal battles, unusual phrasing in official documents has often been the telltale sign of outside influence. When filings start sounding more like tabloid headlines than legal arguments, it usually means publicists are steering the message even within evidence meant for a judge. That's why this Wayfair mention matters so much. On the surface, it's just a typo. Beneath it, it feels like a self-exposing slip. Instead of undermining Baldoni, it pointed the spotlight back at Blake's camp, almost like catching someone editing their own Wikipedia page while insisting they never touch in gossip terms. It was the equivalent of leaking your own screenshots while trying to prove you've been ignored. Once people saw the seams of the narrative, they couldn't unsee them. What looked like a clerical error began to resemble a carefully managed PR maneuver that backfired spectacularly. And Baldoni wasted no time responding. He filed a subpoena aimed directly at uncovering how much outside influence had shaped the filings from the very beginning, forcing the question of whether this was a courtroom fight or a publicity war dressed up as one.
Isabela's lawyers are trying to paint that more nefariously. They're saying that but at this point they're calling it the Baldoni team, even though it's the Wayfair team. They're doing that on purpose. There's so many fingerprints here from Blake Lively. It's so obvious from my perspective. Ron's as well, and others I'm going to show you. But this is seemingly written by Blake's team because it's so anti-Justin in a way. That's just we've never heard this from her. And at first when I read this, I was kind of like, well, wait, what does this mean? But let's break down some of the problems that Isabela's now going to face. Because look, she's trying to make it clear that now, not then, Baldoni has tried to manipulate, threaten, control, and otherwise act inappropriately towards Miss Ferreira. Because of the subpoena? And because of an indemnification clause, which we're going to get to in a second. But this is absolutely bonkers. Now, as we get to this, I want to throw this first point in too. She makes it clear, look, I was on this film for 4 days. I didn't get paid a lot. I wasn't involved with a lot of this, but now I'm being pulled in by Baldoni. Well, you actually were pulled in by Blake. Let's just make sure that's correct. I'm going to correct it every time. The complaint that Baldoni filed in response to Lively, not against her, in response to Lively, makes 4 direct references, including a few text messages. Some, not surprisingly, some of the text messages she sent to Baldoni were very positive. Well, why is that not surprising? Because he's a good guy. Included the types of comments one would expect from a young actress to make to the director and producer of her first feature film. So this is typical for her to lie? Is that what you're saying? And all actresses lie? I don't know, man. If I didn't have a safe time on a set, I don't think I would want to text that director how safe of an experience I had. Now, I may say, thanks so much for the experience. I had a great time. I might do something like that, but to be so specific.
Why would Justin Baldoni fight so aggressively to unearth more of Isabela Ferrer's text messages if the ones already public painted him in such a positive light as safe, respectful, even admired? That question hung in the air the moment news of his subpoena broke. And make no mistake, a subpoena isn't a polite request. It's not an invitation to share if you feel like it. It's a binding court order that compels disclosure. With the weight of the law behind it in this case, Baldoni wasn't satisfied with a handful of flattering exchanges. He wanted it all, every text, every thread, every private conversation sitting in Ferrer's phone. On the surface, it looked like a strategic counterstrike aimed squarely at dismantling the narrative Blake Lively's camp had spent months constructing. If Ferrer's filings suggested she felt coerced, hesitant, or uneasy, then releasing her full, unedited text history could demolish that storyline in one sweep. Selective quotes can be spun. Hundreds of conversations spread across months are far harder to manipulate. They either uphold the claims or expose the cracks, but subpoenas come with collateral damage. They don't just touch one person, they can pull in anyone connected by text, call, or email. Suddenly, what was once private banter risks being displayed in open court. For Ferrer, that prospect was terrifying. Ignoring the order wasn't an option. Defying a subpoena could trigger contempt charges, hefty fines, or even a compelled testimony under oath. For a young actress still fighting for her place in Hollywood, the stakes couldn't be more personal. Reputation here is currency, and once the industry starts whispering that you're evasive or uncooperative, opportunities dry up long before you can defend yourself. That left Ferrer in a painful dilemma. Comply fully, and she risked revealing messages that hinted she hadn't been entirely truthful about her comfort, or worse, that her words had been shaped by outside influence. Resist, and she risked looking like she was shielding Blake and Ryan's camp, cementing her as a pawn in a power game she never intended to join. Either way, her career and credibility were on the line, and here's where speculation sharpened. What if Baldoni believed those unseen messages not only defended his character but also exposed pressure tactics from Blake's circle? If that were true, the subpoena wasn't just a shield, it was a weapon. A tool to force daylight onto manipulation, to corner Blake's team with raw, unfiltered evidence that no press release could spin. That's why this single legal move reverberated far beyond procedure. It wasn't just paperwork, it was a hammer blow to the foundation of Blake's narrative. And in Hollywood's most high-stakes battles, aggressive courtroom tactics often hint at something deeper: quiet contractual maneuvers, timing strategies, and hidden negotiations already shaping outcomes long before the public realizes the game being played.
To craft a narrative that Miss Ferrer spent substantial time with Lively during the promotion, and that she felt compelled to shun Baldoni in repudiation of her warm words. The complaint made no other allegations that directly referenced her. Well, that's enough, though. There's enough allegations here, and Blake has subpoenaed you. So technically, why don't you just reply to the subpoena? Why didn't she just reply to the subpoena? That's the big question here. It's very strange that she didn't just, respond to the subpoena. Well, the reason she didn't respond to the subpoena is because of an indemnity clause. Now, this indemnity clause is part of her contract agreement. This provision basically says, all expenses should be covered, reasonable otherwise, suffered or incurred by the artist arising in connection with the development, production, or exploitation of the picture, and all ancillary rights related to there. So therefore, she's saying, well, you got to pay for all my legal bills. But here's the problem. First of all, what Justin then responded was like, well, no, I'm not just going to do that because that's not how it works. If you do that, then yeah, Wayfair is going to represent you because That's our plan is going to do that. And then when she's like, well, whoa, I don't want Wayfair to represent me. Fine. They then found some sort of mediator to try to negotiate. Okay, well, what would be covered then if you're doing this on your own? Because it might not be covered if you're not going to then come onto our lawyers, our insurance, and our lawyers' plan.
Could a single overlooked line in a contract really be powerful enough to freeze an entire legal case? That's the debate igniting now, after Isabela Ferrer's team suddenly leaned on an indemnity clause to stall proceedings and buy themselves time. On paper, it sounds dull, standard boilerplate buried in nearly every entertainment contract. But once it was cited as grounds to hit pause, the entire battle took on a new dimension. At its core, indemnity is about protection. It shields actors and crew from financial or legal fallout tied to the projects they sign on for. If a production collapses, or if lawsuits surface, indemnity clauses ensure the performer isn't left footing the bill for mistakes beyond their control. In Hollywood, it's considered routine. The complication here is that Ferrer isn't a defendant. She hasn't been accused of misconduct. She's a witness. And that's where the controversy explodes. How can language designed to protect talent from liability suddenly be stretched to shield someone from the burden of testimony in court? Legal experts were quick to note that indemnity clauses don't apply to witnesses. They cover contractual obligations, not sworn statements under oath. Which is why Ferrer's reliance on it sparked immediate criticism. To many, it looked less like legal protection and more like deliberate delay. By planting her in contractual limbo, everything slowed to a crawl. And in that stall, one person benefits most: Blake Lively. Every week without new evidence entering the record gives her team more time to polish messaging, control headlines, and reshape the public narrative. The backlash was swift. Commentators labeled it a textbook Hollywood tactic, making the case look complicated when the real strategy is just to run out the clock. Stretch things long enough, and public outrage fades. Headlines move on, audiences lose interest, and reputations quietly recover in the shadows. In battles like these, the courtroom is only half the arena. The real fight plays out in the press cycle, where timing is everything, but there's an even sharper twist. Critics argue this isn't just delay, it mirrors a well-known psychological playbook called DAVO: deny, attack, and reverse victim and offender. Already, filings from Blake's side have begun reframing Ferrer. Instead of a vulnerable witness under pressure, she's now portrayed as manipulative, calculating, even complicit. Meanwhile, Blake is repositioned as the wronged party, the victim. The role reversal is buried inside legal language, but its impact is plain. What looked like a procedural clause has become a rhetorical weapon. And history offers plenty of examples. In other celebrity disputes, clauses meant as safety nets have been hijacked into smokescreens, buying time until judges cut through the haze. By then, the public's attention is elsewhere, and the question of truth has been replaced by one of stamina, who can endure the spotlight the longest without breaking. That's why this indemnity clause matters. It isn't just dry legal jargon, it's strategy in disguise, a tool to bend time and reshape perception. And the longer the clock drags, the more deeply Ferrer risks becoming trapped, caught between powerful players who know exactly how to turn paperwork into leverage. What comes next won't be hidden in dense contracts. It will be etched in careers, reputations, and the choices of those forced to survive under the glare of Hollywood's harshest light.
Her subpoena are the same things Justin asked for. It's very commutative, duplicate of the past, needing to make this overlap of categories, blah, 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 is, proving that, it's all to harass Miss Ferrer. Like, come on. What? This is to harass you? You're losing me, Isabella. I've been on your side for a while, but your lawyers are not doing the right thing here. If you were subpoenaed by Blake, and you're then therefore willing and ready to give it, why wouldn't you give those same things to Justin as well? Why? He has every right. Instead, it sure seems like you are trying to stall, evade, yada, yada. There's a whole part in this about they sent to the wrong 2 addresses and blah, blah, blah. It's absolute nonsense. Just respond. Your lawyer can respond. Why aren't you responding? It makes no damn sense.
It's got me fired. Discovery in this case, when they are subpoenaing content creators that they've never met simply because they have anti-Blake Lively stuff just pisses me the fuck off. And I don't know who these Isabela Ferrer attorneys are, but I am not impressed at all. This document is meant to confuse. It is meant to conflate. It is meant to accuse. And it is like, it probably would have been easier for people to accept it if they had been written and filed 4 months ago, when it was like, oh my God, everything they're doing is so bad and it's Darvo and all that, which is another basic thing that they say in here. I'm not buying it now. I'm not buying it. And I'm not buying it because I know that the things that they're saying, while they might sound smart to people who don't know any better, are not smart at all.
And that she's a lawyer, just so we're clear. She's a lawyer. And all these are the things that are being requested by Blake. Okay, so give them to Justin. What's the problem here? I don't get it. And there's all these emails. Oh, well, they keep asking us that we won't get the indemnification unless we send over. It never actually says that. He just, various emails here, like, will you accept the provision? Are you going to accept it? Why are you not giving us the subpoena? Why are you not refusing to accept it? Oh, and there's some bad press. Like, she barely got any press. No one knows who she is. And then here are the mean words. And now, whoever's texting anybody in this case, stop. There's a fan who's out there trying to, like, please unless you're actively in this case or being subpoenaed, go away and don't bother people. It's not helping. It only hurts the cause, in my opinion. And anybody who's sending these, you look dumb. You look dumb. Whether you're right or I agree with it, doesn't matter. Leave people alone. Now they're going to be used against you. Now, all that said, it's not even that bad. You suck, bish. I mean, you shouldn't say that, but a lot of this is like, just tell the truth. Stop dodging the subpoena and tell the truth. You're going to lose your audience.
What happens when a rising actress suddenly finds herself caught in the crossfire between two of Hollywood's most powerful forces? That's the storm Isabela Ferrer now faces. On one side stands Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds, the industry's golden pair. Their influence stretches far beyond acting credits. They run production companies, anchor global brand deals, and count studio heads among their closest allies, people who can make or break a project with a single phone call. On the other side is Justin Baldoni, an actor and filmmaker whose reputation isn't built only on creative work, but on a personal philosophy that's earned him a following reaching far beyond Hollywood circles. For Ferrer, still carving out her career, this is less a dispute than a tightrope walk in hurricane winds. Every move risks disaster. Does she really have freedom of choice here? If she resists Blake's version of events, she risks alienating Hollywood royalty, a career-ending misstep for someone still establishing herself. The history is clear. Many promising careers have crumbled not because of lack of talent, but because they crossed the wrong power brokers. In Hollywood, perception destroys faster than failure. One wrong impression can close doors for years, and the public narrative isn't shaped just by testimony or filings. It's crafted by PR teams who stitch together court documents with media-ready talking points, sometimes line by line. That's why Ferrer's role doesn't feel like neutral testimony, it feels choreographed. The audience, primed by fandom and bias, splits sharply. Some see her as Blake's puppet, too scared or too loyal to break free. Others accuse her of betrayal, asking how she could praise Baldoni privately while supporting claims against him publicly. Both versions flatten her into a symbol, stripping away her humanity and recasting her as nothing more than a pawn. This dynamic isn't unique. Hollywood is filled with cautionary tales of young actors whose careers quietly evaporated after brushing against an A-list couple. Projects suddenly vanish. Endorsements disappear. Calls stop coming. The gossip spins excuses, but the pattern remains the same: influence dictates survival. For Ferrer, compliance offers no true safety, while resistance almost guarantees risk. Either way, she's playing a game scripted by others, not herself. That's why her name is already cemented in this scandal, no matter what choice she makes. Whether she leans toward honesty, compliance, or open defiance, she's no longer steering her own path. She's being moved around the board by forces larger than her. What began as a legal clash over filings and clauses has grown into something more revealing: a case study in how power, manipulation, and survival collide beneath Hollywood's harshest spotlight. And this is why scandals like these rarely feel resolved. They aren't designed for resolution. They're engineered to confuse, to drag on, to leave the public drained and uncertain about what to believe. Before picking sides or joining the outrage online, take a step back. Blind loyalty doesn't serve the truth, it serves the players scripting the show. The real questions remain: who gains from delay? Who benefits from confusion? And where do the cracks in this carefully built story actually show? Because if there's one lesson so far, it's this: there are still more layers waiting to be uncovered. Stay cautious, stay skeptical, and prepare for the next twist.